This is Goku-san DBZ. Now, this is just a little vlog. I decided to do a little discussion video. Recently, somebody asked me, question, what are my thoughts on, obviously, things such as spirituality and things. I myself, personally, am agnostic. Though I try also follow some of the basic principles of, things such as Buddhism teaching about basically trying to do good for the better and not allowing things such as greed and things of that to drive your life, or anger, hatred, things like that. So some basic teachings I try to follow myself. Now, with that said, also, fun fact, on the side and stuff, I have actually done for well over 10 years, I have done theology studies. Of course, study of different religions. There's a basic principle, and that is to understand a culture, you must first understand the religion of that culture, because that will explain many things, aspects. So, with that said, I was asked what are my opinions on like different symbols, things of that nature, because actually, it's one of my favorite things to research. Is actually researching symbolism and different things in different societies. With that said, quickly do a little bit a short vlog, um, such as influential figures throughout modern history on, for instance, the what is referred to as the New Age movement. Now, quick, of course, little piece of info. Really, even though people call it the New Age movement, is actually quite old in comparison because the philosophies, the teachings, though there are many different groups that are under the umbrella of New Age. Keep in mind with this. One of the first things to know about New Age movement and stuff is it's actually quite old. Because, as I said, there's many different philosophies and teachings in New Age. Like, some people in New Age would follow teachings of like Buddhism and stuff, which is really technically not an actual religion. Buddhism is more of a philosophy, a way of life. There's no true God or deity in Buddhism. And Theology 101, in order to be defined as a religion, you must have a god or deity. And technically speaking, Buddhism has neither, or rather traditional Buddhism, though there are many groups of Buddhism. Of course, the two predominant ones being Tibetan Buddhism and Zen Buddhism. Tibetan, of course, from Tibet, though you can find people in China and India and places that practice it. It's the most old, though probably the most famous is probably Zen. Though there are other people who have added their own thoughts and philosophies on these teachings, such as Osho, as an example, is a perfect example. But if you want to go, really, what helped lead the way to the popularization of Eastern thought and like philosophy and New Age thought in the West, specifically here in North America or in Europe and places? Many different people over many hundreds of years, specifically. Now, some of the influential people help grow it into being really popular, and I do think there's a two versions of the New Age movement. There's some basic teachings and philosophies I very much agree with, and then there's some that have tried to hijack it for more radicalization, more radical ideals in New Age philosophy, which has been adopted more by things such as certain cults or certain occult groups. Now, keep in mind, just quick piece, but first, one of the names of people that comes up when you look into like American, North American, or Western philosophy on things, New Age wise, and teachings, which is very much old, thousands of years old. A lot of basic teachings come from things like Hinduism, Buddhism, though it's not really a religion, paganism, Shinto, Taoism, Tao. I mean, there's many groups that follow a lot of the basic same principles and teachings. And in Judaism, you have one branch off called Kabbalah. Um, One of the basics, like some individual names that come up, I've noticed in my researching of things. One individual is a certain younger woman at the time when she was around. Margaret Ann Hutchinson is one name that comes up quite a bit. In more Eastern thought and philosophy in Europe, for instance, from hundreds of years ago, is the Swedish mystic is one that really comes up quite a bit. Swedenborg. And of course, you don't know about Swedenborg. He was a Swedish mystic, very heavily influential on a lot of New Age thought and philosophy in Europe. Also, quick little piece of info, fun fact. In America, we have two regular rites in, for instance, the Freemasons, the Scottish Rite and the York Rite. Now, in Europe, there's actually three rites to the Freemasons. There's the Scottish Rite, the York Rite, and then the Rite of Swedenborg, exclusive only to Europe, Freemasonry. But with that said, some of the basic teachings from Swedenborg and from other mysticism also plays a heavily influence in things, secret societies, such as the Freemasons, as well as many other groups. Of course, you have legends of things like the Knights Templar, what am I thinking of? The Illuminati. But with that said, you have other influential individuals other than just those. You have probably one of the most influential modern influences, definitely on occult theosophy, which is what actually called theosophy, or the House of Theosophy. This particular individual, she was heavily influential on many individuals she had that followed her teachings. Her name was H.P. Blavatsky, also known as Madame Blavatsky. Now, to be fair, unlike some of the other individuals, yeah, she had some interesting ideals and stuff, but at the same time, she was very racist as well. She was a half German, half Russian immigrant. She married a retired U.S. actually general from the Civil War era. His name was Henry S. Olcott. Together, they would found the House of Theosophy, also known as the Theosophical Society, which its symbol contains three different symbols. The ancient Egyptian cross, if you will. You also have in the symbol a Star of David, well, 6 points, though it's more the alternate version called the Seal of Solomon. And you have other stuff, and also she used the swastika, which a quick little fun fact on that. Its origins actually come from more than 4,000 years ago from, of course, Hinduism, and then adopted by Buddhism and many others. It didn't become a symbol of evil until it was hijacked by, of course, Adolf Hitler. Fun fact, he actually followed a lot of the teachings of Madame Blavatsky. In her book called The Secret Doctrine, she was obsessed over the Aryan race, for instance. She was obsessed with also Tibet, about supposedly that's where they came from originally, the Aryan race. So yeah, a lot of her ideals and stuff were adopted by, well, really groups like the Thule Society and other secret societies, besides, of course, originally being many of these teachings being in the Theosophical Society, which has a base of operation in New York City. It has connections to the, to the United Nations and many other organizations. It's quite influential. You have other organizations that follow a lot of the same teachings, but yeah, Hitler was awfully obsessed over Blavatsky's work. No surprise, and it kind of explains where some of his ideological manifestations and stuff in his subconscious came from. Obviously, from a lot of the ideals and teachings from the book The Secret Doctrine. Also, fun fact: Henry S. Olcott was used or attended all the seances that were done in the White House under Lincoln, or rather Lincoln's wife, trying to contact, of course, their passed away son. I'll quickly get on to some other names you may have heard throughout the years. One specific individual, and that is an individual called Aleister Crowley, probably the most influential modern occultist. Many people consider him to be the grandfather, the godfather of the occult. Now, to be fair, his teachings and philosophies are very different from most, like, for instance, modern occultists. For instance. But with that said, his ideals were very dangerous. To be fair, he is responsible for many people's deaths as well. He was a high-ranking European Freemason, of course. I believe he was like a 98th degree Freemason, which is about the highest you can go. Also, he was known, of course, as the most wicked man alive by the London Times. He also ended up, did a lot of blood rituals and stuff in his little Abbey of Thelema, as it was called, located in Sicily, Italy, and basically ended up being shut down by Mussolini, the radical dictator and stuff of Italy. He shut it down, but he wouldn't tear it down because even he feared the influence and the power of Crowley and Crowley's followers. Because Crowley was, unfortunately, really obsessed over blood magic and especially sex magic. And of course, his signature was spelling magic with a K rather than a C. And then traditional pagans and stuff spell it with CK. Just a little fun fact. But I'll quickly wrap this up video. But a few more individuals. But Crowley was heavily influential in a lot of really rock music and metal. He really was influential in a lot of music artists, especially of the 60s and 70s. Though Crowley himself died not long after the end of World War II. He was in his 70s when he passed away. Now, it's amazing how influential to this day he actually is. Though he's best well known out of his 20 plus books he wrote. He's best well known for his first book, called The Book of the Law. Which of course he wrote supposedly on 3 successive days in Cairo, Egypt. Now, the basic statement is, do what thou wilt should be the whole of the law. There is no law above do what thou wilt. Now, more or less he's stating, do what you want, regardless of consequences. And then others tried to adopt it and try to make it more mellow sounding. In particular, individuals such as a certain person by the name of Leary, which was heavily influenced in the drug revolution of the 60s and 70s, and he was known as a disciple of Crowley. Also, quick fun fact of disciples of Blavatsky's teachings. You may have heard of a couple of them. Edgar Allan Poe. You may have also heard of one of her other disciples. His name was H.P. Lovecraft, which really shouldn't be a surprise on Lovecraft. Now, if you want to know who are some modern writers and artists and stuff influential today that follow the teachings of Crowley, well, you may have heard of one of them. His name is Alan Moore, one of the most influential individuals in comic books, specifically for DC. Though he's known for Swamp Thing, particularly though known for V for Vendetta, which, fun fact, does reference Aleister Crowley in the graphic novel of V for Vendetta. Just a little fun fact. But he influenced many songs by many music artists done about him. You have Ozzy Osbourne, which did a song called Mr. Crowley. Led Zeppelin was obsessed over Crowley, specifically Jimmy Page was obsessed over Crowley. I mean, seriously, he even bought Crowley's old mansion on Loch Ness. But other individuals such as Ziggy Stardust, which of course was early days of David Bowie, he was quite obsessed over Crowley. In later years, surprisingly, he ended up rejecting Crowley and his teachings and things, though there were quite a few people to this day that follow the philosophy of do what thou wilt. Modern day music, believe it or not, even rappers follow his teaching. Specifically, Jay-Z is probably one of the biggest modern icons that follows Crowley's teachings. Heck, he's even had hoodies and stuff branded "Do What Thou Wilt" on the front. Most people who have not studied theology or religious studies are going to have no clue what "Do What Thou Wilt" came from, unless you actually have done your research. Now, with that said, a couple of other modern people that follow a lot of the same teachings of Crowley and others of that philosophy. You have Kenneth Anger and Anton LaVey, which, of course, founded in New York, or not New York, but San Francisco, the Church of Satan. Which, yeah, one is more, or rather, LaVey was more of a humanist or atheist with certain philosophies. Anger was the more radical of the two. He was more into the spiritual side of Crowley's teachings. Of other more modern day artists that have used some of his stuff in, say, lyric writing and things, you have individuals such as, of course, I think probably one of the best well known being Marilyn Manson is probably one of the best well known. Has used references. There have been others, of course, throughout the years as well in rock and metal and other genres as well. But, quickly wrap this up, one of the last people that followed a lot of the teachings and would found one of the most influential today cults in modern history and most powerful in North America. That was Dennis Leary. Not Dennis Leary, but darn it, what's his name? Hubbard is his name. The founder and creator of course, Scientology, was a disciple of Crowley's teachings, which really doesn't surprise me all that much, in all honesty, when you look at the full some of the teachings and things, ideals, though I think personally, though of course Crowley also would influence many other organizations which have headquarters in San Francisco today, such as the OTO, which follows ancient Egyptian teachings, and probably the best well-known group he was a part of, called Order of the Golden Dawn. But that is just a special vlog on some basic talking points of different influential individuals on what they call modern free thought and stuff. Though, if you want probably one of the more surprising artists, I guess not surprising, that also follows a lot of Crowley's teachings, probably one of the best well-known modern music artists, though influential even to this day, is Maynard. Of course, the frontman of A Perfect Circle and Tool. When you look at some of Tool's music and stuff, it actually really does not surprise me one bit when I learned Maynard followed a lot of his teachings. Not surprising at all. But with that said, this is just a short little vlog. Let me know if you'd ever like me to do another vlog in the future, a discussion on maybe another religious or spiritual topic, or go more in depth on the influences and the history of the New Age movement. But with that said, this is Goku's Son DBZ signing out. I'll see y'all next time. Same YouTube time, same YouTube channel.